Good evening. Good evening. I know you're all cheering for me. At least my wife and daughter are. Anyway, my name is Barry Rosenstein, and I'm a member of the board at the Y here. And I'm honored to welcome you to what I know will be a fascinating discussion tonight. Before we begin, I have a few pieces of house business. First, I'm delighted to welcome you to the opening event of this year's Broadway Talk series. I have to tell you, last time I did one of these introductions, it was for Jeff Immelt and John Paulson, and it was a very different crowd. Anyway, don't miss the stellar lineup in the series coming up. On October 24th, David Hyde Pierce will be here, and on December 6th, Elaine Stritch will be here. And also, please go to the website, www.92y.org, to order tickets and for frequent program updates. Next, I want to remind you to submit your questions for the speakers on the cards handed out by the ushers during the conversation this evening. We ask that you write your first name on the card so our moderator can acknowledge you when asking your question. Last, but certainly not least, the 92nd Street Y thanks Carolyn and Curtis Schenker, our very own rock and rollers, for underwriting tonight's program. Now for the reason we're here. Three pretty extraordinary and very cool guys are going to have a conversation. Of course, you already know that Billie Joe Armstrong is the lead vocalist. Main songwriter and guitarist for Greenday, an epic band that has been nominated and won an insane number of awards. I would look this up, and when I say insane, I mean insane. They've been nominated for 179 awards and won 89 of them in a 21-year, 11-album career. I think it's pretty safe to say that Michael Mayer is considered to be the most innovative Broadway director working today. He won the 2007 Tony Award for Best Direction of a Musical for Spring Awakening, and of course, he should have won in 2009 for American Idiot. And both of these guys will be interviewed by our host for Broadway Talks, Jordan Roth. I cannot say enough about Jordan Roth. Jordan continues to bring the best of Broadway to 92nd Street. His past guests on the stage have included Nathan Lane, Liev Schreiber, Laura Linney, and we're so very grateful for his incredible support of the Y. As president of Jujamson Theaters, Jordan is unquestionably the most influential and groundbreaking theater producer on Broadway today. His current productions include American Idiot, Fela, Jersey Boys, A Little Night Music, and the upcoming The Book of Mormon, Elf, and How to Succeed in Business Without Really Trying. He also created GiveNick.com, where theatergoers can purchase discounted tickets and give 5% of their ticket price to the charity of their choice. However, one fact that you may not have known about Jordan or his two guests is that they're actually pretty conventional. They're kind of old-fashioned, you actually might say. Jordan Roth got hooked on Broadway when he first saw La Cage. Billie Joe used to listen to classic show tunes as a kid, singing along to Annie Get Your Gun, among others. Just imagine a punk version of You Can't Get a Man with a Gun. And the main character in American Idiot is Johnny, also known as Jesus of Suburbia, an adolescent who has been raised on Ritalin in a town called Jingletown, a suburb from which he flees in search of freedom and meaning. Well, Michael Mayer compares Johnny to Millie in Thoroughly Modern Millie, because you got a girl coming from Kansas to the big city. I told you, these guys are really old-fashioned. I don't know what you're all into. Anyway, ladies and gentlemen, I give you Jordan Roth.
Hello, team. All right. We got a good one. Tonight we've added a little Twitter action to the proceedings. Hundreds of people, truly, tweeted their questions for our guests, and I'll be asking a few of them throughout the evening. One of those people is with us tonight, and she's celebrating her 21st birthday. Where are you, Megan? As promised, Megan, happy birthday. Everybody give Megan a birthday hug on the way out. Okay. Our first guest is a visionary director and creator, an artist who provokes our minds with his searing perspective of our society, who engages our hearts with his gentle exploration of the human spirit, and who stimulates our bodies with his visceral compositions of sight and sound. He is uniquely multifaceted, able to mine the depths of classic drama, as he did in his 1997 Tony Award-winning Best Revival of Arthur Miller's A View from the Bridge. Able to guide into life new plays, as he did in his Tony Award-winning Best Play, Sideman. Able to celebrate the classic musical form, as he did in his Tony Award-winning Best Musical, Thoroughly Modern Millie. And able to explode the musical form, as he did in his Tony Award-winning Best Musical, Spring Awakening. For that piece, he himself was awarded the Tony, Drama Desk, and Outer Critics Circle Awards for Best Director. This past season, he took us on a joyful journey of everyday rapture. And currently, he is reincarnating the classic On a Clear Day into a profoundly romantic journey about what it is to love another being. He is an artist of poetry and purpose, and he makes kick-ass shows. Our next guest is an honest-to-God rock star. As the vocalist, guitarist, lyricist, and co-composer of the legendary Greenday, he has given voice to the rage and love of a generation. We got a couple more. He first exploded onto the world stage just shy of his 22nd birthday, along with bandmates Mike Dirnt and Trey Cool with their major label debut, Dookie. The album went on to sell over 15 million copies worldwide, won a Grammy Award, and was called the Best Rock Album of the Year by Time magazine. It spoke to and for bored teenagers everywhere, and it galvanized a community. The band went on to top charts and amplify emotions with its albums Insomniac, Nimrod, and Warning, and with its famously theatrical marathon concerts that fill stadiums across the globe, where fans are frequently called on stage to sing and where anything can happen. In 2004, Greenday took a giant leap, setting the bar for modern rock and roll with its landmark album, American Idiot. Demanding that the personal is political and the political is personal, the album resonated with citizens of all ages and all nationalities. It reached #1 in 19 countries, sold over 15 million copies, produced 5 hit singles, and won Grammys for Best Rock Album and Record of the Year. It could have been the peak of an illustrious career, but just last year, the band pushed even further with their latest work, 21st Century Breakdown. Again, winning the Grammy for Best Rock Album, and making history with the song Know Your Enemy, the first ever to top Billboard's rock, alternative, and mainstream rock charts simultaneously. Together, our two guests have combined the best of those two albums into one groundbreaking theatrical experience that is redefining the Broadway musical. American Idiot is currently blowing the roof off the St. James Theater, and as my office sits directly above that theater, I can say that quite literally. Ladies and gentlemen, the visionaries of music and theater, Billie Joe Armstrong and Michael Mayer. All right, here we go. We got a while, so we might want to save some. Billie, you've said that when you, Mike, and Trey were making the American Idiot album, you always thought it should end up on stage. Michael, you've said that after listening to the album over and over in your car, you too saw it as a stage piece. But for each of you, what was the moment when you realized that this idea, these characters, this creative team, at this time in the world, was going to be that stage version?
I think it was the first time we met, really. I mean, there was an article that came out in Variety magazine that Michael did an interview for, and he said that the next thing he wanted to do was to put American Idiot on stage, and then someone put it up on a fan site.
And that was news to you?
Yeah, I had no idea. It was, there was it was up on a fan site called Greenday.net, and then one day we got a call, and he had me come out, and we met, and it was good.
We were at, is this working? There we go. We met at Bar Centrale, which is like a real theatery hangout, which was an unlikely
46th Street, we'll see you there.
Yeah. And I think that it was that conversation, because I had an idea in my head. It wasn't completely formed yet. And I didn't want to go too far imagining it if it was a non-starter with you guys. If you didn't believe in the project,
You kept your idea from us.
I sort of did. Yeah.
I go, so you got any ideas? And he goes, yes, but I'm not going to tell you.
And you said, all right, cool.
Yeah, I said, go for it. All right,
I told you basically that it would be like the story of three guys in the suburbs trying to, imagine a different way of living in those bad Bush years, and that they went different directions and then came home again, slightly different, and that's really what I said. And he's like, okay, that sounds great. and at that moment, I knew then that it could happen.
Do you think if he had said, not sure about that, but I'm interested in you, would you have explored a different way in, or you knew this was the version? These three guys, this journey.
That's a really good question. I think that I was so blown away by the work, by that album, and the eloquence of the writing of it, that if you had said, like, I think it should be, what about this, and offered a completely different version, I probably would have gone with it, honestly, because I was into finding what that wanted to be.
Mm-hmm.
And the process, we also did go through a lot of that from that point on. The conversations we had on the phone and email and stuff, it did shift.
Mm-hmm. The show also includes several songs that were not on the original album, but rather from 21st Century Breakdown. Mm-hmm. How different do you think your storytelling impulse would have been if you were creating the show when the album first came out without the benefit of those subsequent years, subsequent political changes, and subsequent music?
It would be a lot shorter.
Yeah.
It would have been 52 minutes long.
Yeah.
Well, there you go.
Yeah. Well, he was saying to me that there was. It seemed like that, for musically, like storytelling, it seemed like there had been some holes, and so first he got some B-sides, and then I said, well, I've got a bunch of demos for the new album. So, and I think I gave you Know Your Enemy, 21 Guns, Before the Lobotomy, East Jesus Nowhere.
Yeah,
Couple
no,
others.
not it was Static Age
Static Age.
and
Yeah, Viva La Gloria or something like
yeah,
that.
I don't remember. It was one that didn't seem
Stuff
to
that didn't
fit.
make it.
Yeah, didn't make the cut.
See ya. American Idiot, though, is very much a response to the post 9/11 Bush era, and 21st Century Breakdown seems very much a response to today. How do you see the differences among those two moments and that you were responding to, and the pieces that emerged?
Well, I think with American Idiot, it's right in the middle of the worst political time of my life. That's for sure. And then where things just seemed like it was just so apocalyptic, and there was like everything, all the information you're getting from television, and sort of this reality TV war that was going on that was mixed with all these different commercials, like anything from Viagra to the NFL or whatever. I have no idea, and that was just like right in the thick of it, just mass confusion. I was completely confused and scared, and I think after 9/11, I remember it just seemed like the country shut down. Everyone felt paralyzed. Nobody really knew what to do, because I think America wasn't really, it's something that had never happened to us before. And then with all the, with this asshole for a president that we had, was he, instead of sort of maybe instead of looking at it as an opportunity to join the rest of the world, he alienated us from the rest of the world. And I think as a country we became isolated, and there was only one idea that people were getting overseas or wherever about what they thought of America, and I felt so misrepresented. I was like, this is not a world this is not a country I live in. This isn't my America. So, then that's when like the song American Idiot came out. Anyways, fast forward to 21st Century Breakdown. I think it's about that world, and it's the end of a lousy era, and it's like I think it's that defining moment where you have to destroy something to make something new happen, and I think that regime was finally destroyed. We're still feeling the effects of it, but I think we're finally got a new start, and that's what I think 21st Century Breakdown is about.
It seems like throughout your work you're consistently grappling with that push and pull between rage and love, between destruction and idealism. Do you see those two forces in a battle that one of them could actually win, or do you see them as both essential to exist in balance?
Well, I think you need to have the balance a little bit. I mean, to be able to channel that energy in some way. I think, John Gallagher was talking about it earlier tonight on a talkback we did, and he was talking about how if there's too much, in his character, if it's all rage, then it becomes boring. Life gets boring. It's very easy to go from an angry young man to a bitter old bastard. Where then in the love side of it, well, love's a wonderful thing, but that could be just as irritating. So you have both.
Fair enough.
Yeah.
To that push and pull, you've said if you're going to write a political song, it's got to come from the same places that you'd write a love song. How are those two instincts similar for you?
Well, maybe it's something about the not knowing. It's maybe there's a relationship between like infatuation and also going somewhere into the unknown, like getting into politics or songs that are more topical songwriting. It was it was scary because I've got a 10th grade education. I'm a dropout. I was lived on basically on my own since I was 17, and so I didn't really know. We came from such a political area in the Bay Area and like Berkeley and San Francisco, but it was I think for the first time it was with around 2003 that was the first time it was like, okay, we should start to write about these things, but it's got to come natural, and that's what I mean. It's got a love song has got it's got to become natural. It can't be fake, or else, like you said, it just becomes irritating. But with writing political songs the same way. You can't just write because it can't just be a bunch of empty finger pointing or something. It's you have to be, in order to change something about society, you have to be a part of it at the same time.
I like that. That's
good.
And when you decided then that a narrative album would be the outlet for that, you've said that you explored Rocky Horror, West Side Story, and Tommy to dig into the structure. How did those pieces inform this work?
I think, we were looking for dynamics on how to write, something that's more, songs like Homecoming, or that was the first thing that me, Mike, and Trey collaborated on, besides American Idiot. And then we went into Jesus of Suburbia. So you're like, okay, now we know what we want to do. Now how the hell do you do it? So we were, we just started listening to everything, and I kind of started digging into my background of, singing songs from, George M. Cohan and, it's really strange to watch an 8-year-old sing a song like Satin Doll, so it's, so we were, so we just started getting into these different arrangements and how, and looking at, something like West Side Story and how there's no rules on structure, and it's just about taking a moment, and an emotional moment. It was like scoring. It's like if something's going to be ugly, like there's the line, "Everyone's so full of shit." It's like this sped up version of Black Sabbath, or something like that. Or there's, something that's like very Ramones or something in another section, or whatever. So we were sort of thinking about these, these musicals, but also trying to incorporate like our sort of punk rock background at the same time.
In his review of the initial production in Berkeley, Charles Isherwood in the New York Times drew a direct line between American Idiot and Hair, with, as he writes, the show's story of young men on a confused search for themselves during a time of changing social mores and foreign wars. Do either of you see these two shows as being in dialogue?
Never seen it.
Is that a no?
I've never seen it or heard it, or I've heard a little bit of it, but
Yeah.
Over to you, Mayor.
Yeah, you know what? I think that you can't help but see them in dialogue that way. Hair was responding to a social moment when at the time that it was written, for sure. And there were those parallels. I think that with American Idiot, it was the story that was inside it was much more iconic in a way, and it really was this figure of Jesus of Suburbia and his own a very singular journey and a kind of split self-representation in there. There was the love and the rage embodied by this girl that he meets and this Saint Jimmy that may or may not be a part of him, So the iconic nature of that grafted onto that particular moment in 2004 or 2003 or whenever you guys really started writing it, but sometime, I imagine around, right before his second term, right? Is a very different kind of immediacy than Hair that had a kind of general feel for a whole, for a nation. You know what I mean? It wasn't as, it was more of a feel than it was an absolute specific archetype thing. And I think that the other thing is that the guys, those wonderfully talented authors of Hair were, they were theater people. They came from the theater, and they weren't coming from popular music. They weren't coming from the world of just communicating through their songs. So it was a different kind of thing that way.
Mm-hmm. Although interestingly, some of those songs went from the stage to become popular.
Huge
music.
hits. Oh yeah, I remember listening to them when I was a kid. I hate to admit it, but
you don't have to say that.
Okay.
We also, I think, can draw a thematic connection with Spring Awakening, as both explore a group of young people struggling to find their voice in a society that seems to speak a different language. Of course, Michael, you directed both. You collaborated with the same design team for the most part, and chose John Gallagher to star in both. Do you read these two pieces in connection or continuation in any way?
For myself, I do. I think this was the logical next step in my growth as a director. But I really think they're actually really different species. This really is an opera, and the songs function to actually articulate the longings and the frustrations and the imaginings of the characters. Whereas in Spring Awakening, the songs were so clearly, the whole structure of it was, the intent was that the songs would simply reveal just the emotional life of a human being who might be in the same situation as one of those kids 100 years earlier. So it really did stop the action, and it was about the duality between that buttoned-up existence of 19th century German small town and the expansiveness of Duncan Sheik's music as it might relate to a kid today. So it was in absolute conflict, whereas these songs are completely consonant with the journey of the characters.
Looking at the thematic connections, not the structural, what do you think is, about your own experiences or perspective, continues to compel you to want to explore that teenage alienation, if we can call it that?
Well, I think that my own life, right? Growing up when I did in the 60s and early 70s in a kind of suburban wasteland of my own in Rockville, Maryland. Well, I've been trashing Rockville all week. It's really, it's shameful. I'm gonna go to hell, I think. But growing up gay in that period of time, in a kind of bland non-place, like most suburbs in America are. It was challenging, and I think that it did. I very much felt like I didn't belong there, and so any story that has a young person at its center who feels like he or she doesn't belong there, sign me up. I'm right there for it emotionally. So I'm sure that there's a big connection between those kids in Spring Awakening and these older kids in American Idiot. Maybe I'll graduate to the 30s, for my next show. It'll actually be 30-year-olds.
Alienated 30-year-olds.
Yeah, right. And then I'll move up to the 40s. I'll always be just a little behind my own age.
You're never too old to leave.
Yeah. That's true.
Amen to that.
Right?
Amen. Going back to the structure that you were talking about, the sung-through narrative, really, of American Idiot. some people have had trouble with that and wanted more story, let's say.
Mm-hmm.
Others found it a very bold and modern reinterpretation. What do you think the piece would have lost by adding more?
Adding more story or more dialogue or
Either.
Either. Well, I feel like with a piece like this, which really is like an opera, I'll keep saying that because that's what I think it is. When you're on stage, you live in the world of metaphor. And if you try to, while you're singing your dialogue, and you can look at any of the great operas in history, the story has to be pretty lean and pretty simple. Psychological complication and little fussy stage business will get in the way of the absolute clean, pure line of the narrative when it's sung through, I believe. And I think when you have a conventional book musical, you can get away with a lot more of that because the scenes sort of work their way and it feels a little naturalistic and then it pitches itself to the song, which then, you leap forward and then you go into the next scene. But with an opera, I think you have to honor the basic lean narrative. And I think that's what we would have lost either way. Plus, the way that the album was written, I mean, there really is a momentum to it. And I think we would have lost a lot of the velocity of that. And I think you'd have to have an intermission. And you know what? I hate intermissions.
Me too.
I think they're a pain in the ass.
Me too. Laugh, cry, home by 10.
Right.
Hallowed words of Harvey Fierstein.
Yeah.
So now the show's been running on Broadway 6 months. What do you know about it now that you didn't know when it started?
It's not in Berkeley anymore, that's for sure. What do I know about it now? I know that the actors can get really exhausted putting out that much energy every night. It's give a lot of credit to them. I mean, for really putting everything they can out into it. So.
Oh yeah.
I think one of the things I've learned from watching it over and over again is that the idea that I had of maximalism, Spring Awakening was a kind of minimalist aesthetic. We really went for maximalism, and it is very overwhelming to an audience. And I think that I realize now, I don't know that I would change anything, but watching it now, I'm really aware of how overwhelming the experience is. You get a little distance, when you're not making it every single day. And so I go back now about once a week and really watch it. And I'm really aware that there is so much shit going on from the second that curtain goes up. I understand how some people might feel like, oh my God, I don't know where to look. So I've learned that thing that I didn't want to hear, and I was like, oh, shut up. It's fabulous. What do you know? Maybe there's, I get it, but I still love that element of it. And maybe people will want to see it, many, many times.
I think that's the only cure to that.
Yeah, right? Exactly.
You must return.
Over and over again.
As you have, clearly. And now there's been discussion of a film version. Having evolved from concept album to stage, how do you think these characters and this storytelling style would evolve further for a new medium?
That's a Michael question. I'm not really sure, but the only thing that I'd really want it to do is make sure it's, the whole, the basic structure of the musical is it's based on the album to make sure that rock thing is still intact. So, but when you see it on the big screen or whatever. But Michael?
Yeah, well, I would. I think that what I was saying earlier kind of applies a little bit about metaphor and on stage. Like, I would just, like, as an example, in my mind, you look at the character of Will, played by Michael Esper, and he's basically on the couch all night. And one of the things I've learned is that if you sit over there and just watch him, a whole other play is going on every night. It's kind of amazing. But if you just take his story alone for a moment and you look at it, the couch functions as the metaphorical sinkhole that he falls into. It's the thing that he's anchored to all night. It represents Heather and the baby and the life that he didn't really choose, but he sort of chose, and he's stuck in it, and he almost becomes a part of it, and it looks like it might even swallow him up, kind of. And that's a great metaphor. But in a film, you would see him in his life, and you'd actually see all the details of his day-to-day existence and dealing with Heather's increasing pregnancy and what does it mean to him? How does he, like, walking to the mailbox and lighting up another joint and looking in the refrigerator and not finding any more beer and turning the TV back on again. And eventually it becomes harder and harder for him to leave the house even. You know what I mean? So you can tell in very, very quick moments on film, and that becomes a much more realistic version. Mm-hmm. So I feel like on that level, it could really open up and still be basically the album.
I look forward.
Mm.
As do you, apparently. We talked a lot in the beginning of the run about the potential for theater fans to discover Greenday and for Greenday fans to discover the theater. What do you think surprised each group the most about this new exposure? Perhaps you can speak for the Greenday fans, and you can speak for the theater fans.
I don't know. I mean, I think of all the stuff that's on Broadway right now, we definitely have the most bizarre line out the door for tickets. It's two different kinds of blue hair going on. You know?
God bless them both.
It's great. I remember seeing one showing, and there was this woman that was older, and she was coming up to sit in front of me, and she had her playbill, and she said, "Now this is about a rock band's album or something like that." And then and that was it was great. I love I love feeling like something new. I love feeling like a rookie and just learning, especially when it comes to things on stage, because I've spent so much time on all different sizes of stages, and this is just another one. It's brand new for me, so it makes me feel young, and so there's a new crowd that's involved, and I think that they've intermingled pretty well. I mean, there hasn't been any fistfights. No canes hitting.
Not yet.
Hitting anybody. So
stay tuned.
Yeah, a knife versus canes fight.
West Side Story redo.
Yeah.
I think that one of the things that I get a huge kick out of is the Greenday fans who've come to see the show, and it's their first show that they've ever seen. And I thought, wow, that is, what a trip. If the first time you walk into a theater, what you see is American Idiot, what does that say for what their next experiences will be? Do you know what I mean? I mean, it's very different from going to see Pippin or something for the first time, which was the first Broadway show I saw. And
so where does that audience go from here?
Well, in the big picture?
Yeah.
Well, I don't know. It seems like every 10 years there's a show that has rock music and everyone talks. I keep hitting that. I'm so sorry. There's a show that is successful that has rock music in it, and everyone says, well, this is, this is what it's going to be. It does feel like in recent years, and certainly since Spring Awakening and up to American Idiot, there have been more than there used to be, and I do think the tipping point has shifted. I think that there are more people going to the theater now who grew up listening to rock and roll, and that's a very different world. What excites me about that is actually the historicity of it, because if you look
Good word.
back, oh, thank you,
That's a very 92nd Street Y word.
right? I'm trying to stay true to the demographic whenever possible.
You're doing great.
I think that when you look back at the history of Broadway and you look at Tin Pan Alley, and this is your roots really, because he's Al Jolson reincarnated, I'm convinced. I'm convinced of it. The music that people would tell their stories with was the popular music of the day. Gershwin and Cole Porter and Rodgers and Hart and Rodgers and Hammerstein and Jerome Kern and the list goes on, Irving Berlin. That's what people would go to the theater, they would watch some story, whether it was idiotic or not, they'd see a story, there would be these songs. They would go home and they'd buy the sheet music and they would play those songs on their piano. They would hear those songs on the radio, recorded by their favorite singing stars of the time. They'd go to supper clubs. That was the music that they would hear. And something happened once rock and roll hit. And that became the popular music of the day. And it was no longer the music that you would hear on Broadway. Broadway sometimes tried to pretend to be rock and roll, and they would allow that influence in, but it was always a little ersatz. It never really felt like the real thing. So what we're finding now, and I certainly feel this at American Idiot, and I felt it at Spring Awakening, and I'm sure at Passing Strange they felt this way, and they'll continue to. Spider-Man may feel the same way, but whatever that ends up being.
With love.
But here we are, and we've got the music that you want to listen to on your iPod, and that you listen to when you're driving up the Pacific Coast Highway on your radio or on the CD player in your car. That is the music that we're now really telling stories to on stage again, and our stories are living inside the music that you are writing and that you're communicating to a whole generation and generations at this point. So I think that's very cool, and I feel like we're actually coming full circle as opposed to going in some kind of weird, different direction. Mm-hmm. And that I think is pretty great.
I say amen. Speaking of that full circle and this music, our first Twitter question of the night for Billie. Wow. It's Twitter world, we're just living in it. Abby Fox, are you here? God love you. God love ya.
I know you.
So Abby brings us this question. As a fan, what you, Tom Kitt, and Michael Mayer did to the music of American Idiot has forever changed how I hear it. Has it changed how you hear it, even when you play it on tour as originally written? And I would add, has it changed how you perform it?
I think it's two different animals altogether, because when I see John Gallagher, and I mean, that's such an undeniable great performance that he's putting out every night. That like he's I don't know, I was just sitting here in the mezzanine today and just watching this whole thing go down, and I'm going, holy shit, my songs are on Broadway. You know, like, and so, but removed from it. I felt removed from, like, it was like I was watching it, not thinking of, you know, that, you know, not the way, you know, when Greenday plays it on, you know, playing Jesus of Suburbia, I think it's just a different animal altogether. And what was your question?
Has it changed how you perform it?
You know, there's been a couple of things that we've done, like when we weren't playing the song Last Night on Earth, which is, Tom Kitt just did an epic version of that song. And, you know, there's, we were talking about the movie Amadeus, and there's, when Amadeus goes in and he's playing this other guy's piece for a second and making a joke about it, like, oh, you should have probably done this. And Tom Kitt was like, that's one of my favorite parts of that whole movie. And I go, that's what you did to me, you asshole. Well, I didn't say asshole. Then he goes,
But the sentiment was there.
Yeah. And what was your question? Like, how do I? Like Last Night on Earth. We started playing Last Night on Earth live, and we started. There was, you know, and I think even the way that we do "Wake Me Up When September Ends" was, you know, the way that the cast was performing it. You know, we liked that version, so we kind of started doing it a little bit more that way, and you know, I'm still confused by "Know Your Enemy."
How so?
They switched the lyrics around, so like, you know, so I'm always expecting to, you know, expecting that one part to happen, and I go. Okay.
Have you ever messed that up in concert now because of this?
No, but I know I will. It'll happen. But it's interesting because we'll be playing, and you'll see people out front, and when we're playing like American Idiot, you'll see kids in the front row. They say, you know, it's amazing to see it. It's just had an impact. It's been great.
Where are you, Stephen Hoggett?
Yeah.
I love it. A little impromptu choreography? Anybody? Speaking of Wake Me Up When September Ends, so many of these songs come from your very personal experiences. For those who don't know, that song you wrote about your father dying when you were just 10. How does your perspective on these very personal songs change as you hear them coming out of the mouths of these characters that you and Michael have created?
You know, I mean, that song is always, you know, difficult. I think even when my family came to see the play, that they were, you know, it's you know, it's definitely a heavy moment, and you know, there's something, I mean, when Rebecca Jones is singing "Letter Bomb," that stabs you right in the gut every single time. Like, she just destroys that song in a good way. Yeah. And then going into you know, what's her name? That, I mean, I don't know. You know, it's just again, I'm moved every single time. So.
Going back a bit, you are the youngest of 6 children from a small town in California, and you once joked that your family put the funk back in dysfunctional. How has where and how you were brought up defined who you are as an artist now?
I think there was a lot of chaos in the house. I think there was a lot of, you know, being the youngest, I had a lot of older siblings that were that had their eye on me, and almost in an unfair kind of way, you know, to them, you know. And then I think for me, it's like I think it turned into maybe some sort of, like, I felt like a burden or something. And I never want to, I think for my whole life, it's like I don't want to burden anybody with any, you know, emotional trauma that they don't have to go through. You know, I don't want to be, you know, I want to be more self-sufficient and more, so I'm, you know, I'm kind of literally out there on Broadway a little bit more, say, than my brothers and sisters are. So, so I'm, you know, it's, and I think, you know, I think I look for a quiet place to try to find places to write and to be, for me to, because when chaos surrounds you, I think sometimes for me, if it's like I get, I have selective hearing, you know, so I tend to shut people out, and when I go to a creative place, and it could be a good thing, and or people think I'm totally rude.
You recorded your first song at the age of 5. At age 12, you wrote your first song, Why Do You Want Him? About
14.
14.
Yeah.
Thank you. Yours, it was called Why Do You Want Him? About your mother's new husband.
That's not true.
Not true.
Not true. No.
Deep. That's like all over the research.
Yeah.
Tell me.
Damn that Twitter. No, no, it was about it, like a song of like, you know, it's kind of like, you know, you're gonna lose that girl, you're gonna lose that girl. You know, it's kind of the same thing, you know, just about wanting to be with someone and they want to be with somebody else, you know. It's, you know, dating is just a horrible thing.
Sometimes yes, sometimes no.
You can have a lot of fun.
But you were still 14.
Yeah.
That part's true.
Yeah.
And you formed your first band at 15. Do you ever consider yourself to have been a child prodigy?
No, I don't think so. I would never call myself something like that, you know. It looked really good on a business card, wouldn't it?
Billie Joe Armstrong, rock star, child prodigy. I'd take that card. You met Mike Dirnt, who ultimately became your Greenday co-founder when you were 10?
Yep. Mm-hmm. Carquinez Middle School, Crockett, California.
Rocket.
Yeah, Crockett.
You've been creatively partnered with him since?
Pretty much since the first day we ever spoke to each other. Our first conversation, I don't know why we had this conversation. I don't know why it happened this way, but the first thing we talked about was songwriting. And we were 10. I have no idea. He told me he wrote a song, and it was almost like, I think he said, in a joking way, it was like, I like to teach the world to sing. Or something, it was something like that, you know, and I told him that I wrote something, and I play guitar, and then, you know, he came over to my house, and, you know, it was, and then we would just make, you know, these bad comedy tapes on little cassettes, and, you know, while, you know, Mom was working the graveyard shift, so.
I'm going to make another plea for the child prodigy card, if that's where the first conversation was at 10. And you've been romantically partnered with your wife, Adrienne, since you were 18. What do you think allows you to sustain long-term partnerships?
You know, I was actually thinking about this earlier today. I don't know why. I think I was thinking about the cast and how, like, I get attachments to people, you know, or just being involved with American Idiot, and just how, you know, I worry about the cast getting burnt out, like, you know, like, and it's inevitable that people, you know, they get, you know, you do 8 shows a week, you're gonna get burnt out, you know, and you go, you know, you reach out to them and you're like, you know, are you okay, and is everything cool, and you know, and I don't know, I've just always been, I don't know, and me and Mike and Trey have been in a band for, you know, 20-something years now, and been married for 16 and a half, so it's, I'm attached to the chick, I guess.
At age 19, you wrote for Adrian When It's Time. Mm-hmm. I know, me too. It's a song that was previously unrecorded until you and Michael put it in the show. On stage, Johnny, who sings it, waits for his girlfriend to be asleep before he can sing it to her. Was it the same for you when you wrote it, or did you sing it for Adrian?
It's definitely kind of one of those songs where, it's like, I'll show you mine if you show me yours.
In a manner of speaking, yes.
You say it. You say it first. No, you say it. You say it. So, it's like I've always, I think if I have a hard time saying something, to somebody, I think it's much easier and more emotional for me to say it in a song, So, which is, basically like a serenade, I guess.
Every time. Oh, God. Now, many years later, after having written some of the most enduring anthems of teenage anger and rebellion, you and Adrian are raising teenage sons of your own. How has exploring those emotions in your work affected how you parent?
Well, Adrian is I hope that everyone could have a mother that great, to be honest with you. And you can see it, in our kids. I'm not ashamed to say it. I've got great kids, they're more like roommates now because they're, pretty much taller than me, but, but they're, but they're really good, great hearts, genuinely, honest people, and, we're going to have one hell of an adventure with them, in the next coming few years, so, it's... So, it's
coming to get you.
It's a crazy world out there, with cell phones and the chaos of the internet and things like that, and it's but just try to educate, I guess. I don't know, just try to relate, not no rules, just like guidelines, I guess.
Your oldest son is about the age you were when you first found your way to Gilman Street and the underground punk scene in Berkeley. You've said that punk has always been about doing things your own way. What it represents for me, you said, is ultimate freedom and a sense of individuality, which basically becomes a metaphor for life and the way you want to live it. I love that. Yet, there are those who criticize some choices and music you've made as betraying punk or selling out. If punk is ultimate freedom and individuality, how do you make sense of that criticism?
It all depends on the individual, or I don't know. Some, like I said. I look at it as life, and I like to get into things that are uncharted territory and break new boundaries for myself. And there's certain aspects of life that people look at where you tend to get into a uniform and you put it in a box, and you're not allowed to think outside of that box. So in one hand, it opens up your mind to hold, a lot of different kinds of people, but at the same time, you're not supposed to expand out of that. It's very Bay Area, It's in Bay Area is there's a lot of politics and Berkeley and maximum rock and roll, which was they think rock and roll should. If you write a love song, it's like the feminist police will call you up. Why are you writing this song about women like that? It's literally that, like, it's hardcore, and so I don't know. I put Greenday first, you know. I just followed the music, and that's, you know, and it's taken me here, you know.
We're glad it did. You've said that as opposed to alternative rock guys, hip-hop guys are so much more dangerous and willing to take risks in music in a lot of ways because they're not afraid to be successful. Fascinating irony, afraid to be successful in rock. Where does that fear come from, and what do you think it's actually a fear of?
The early 90s. You know, I mean, there was a time period where people were, you know, it just, everything became introverted, and, you know, the hair came down past the face, and, you know, you were looking at your shoes and you're playing like this, which was cool. There was like, you know, there were some great bands, but, you know, but then there was others you were like, yeah, ugh, you know. So, you know, and, you know, so a lot of sort of like the alternative bands or some of the so-called grunge bands, I think right when Dookie was about ready to come out, it was our mission to try to destroy as many of those bands as we possibly could. You know. But, yeah, I can't remember. What?
How'd you think you did at destroying those?
I think pretty good, you know.
Hell yeah.
You know, but I don't know. But inevitably, you know, you come to that point where you have to, you know, you got the world in front of you, and you got to, you know, you have to think beyond that record and just keep moving forward.
I'd like to read your description of something from a recent interview. You said, "For me, it's about community. It's a sense of self-discovery. It's like you're free to be an individual and taking on new ideas and challenging old ideas. It's about starting something new." That's exactly how I would describe the theater. You were describing punk. Having now experienced both scenes, do you find them similar?
I do. You know, because there's lyrically there is a directness, like just a punch that goes straight to the source. So in storytelling, you know, if you think about, you know, a song by Minor Threat, it's like, I don't want to hear it. You're bullshit. It's just singing straight at you. You know, Ian MacKaye had this great knack for just writing exactly what was on his mind. He was going to tell you like it is, and it was just this no fear, you know. And I think in theater, and the way a lot of people write, there is that, you know, when you come to a moment in a story that's on stage, if you're like watching like Next to Normal or something like that, where it's like suddenly there's just this direct moment where it's like these two people, it could be an argument, it could be about something else, I have no idea, but there's something direct about it, and I think that's the thing that they have in common.
Mm-hmm. Let's dig a little on rock and Broadway. John Perellis, chief music critic of the New York Times, recently wrote, "Broadway may be the final place in America, if not the known universe, where rock still registers as rebellious. In the decorous little jewel boxes that are Broadway's theaters, raunch seems raunchier." Do you agree with that?
I do. I mean, yeah, I do.
So, Michael, having already given us not one but two of Broadway's seminal rock musicals, what do you think rock can do on Broadway that it can't do elsewhere?
Well, it relates a little to what I said before in terms of narrative, and it's kind of what Billie was just saying about punk and the ability for that kind of immediacy. And there's something visceral about rock music that gets your blood pumping. And like today, one thing that, you know, watching from the mezzanine, we were in the mezz today, and I was looking down, and I really did have a fantasy of like pulling all those fucking seats out of the theater, you know, and of the orchestra, just then have people just like, right? I really did think, like, how cool would that be if you didn't have to be, you know,
bolted to the floor.
Yeah.
I hear you.
Know? And I think that is something that rock can do in the theater that, as great as some of the other songwriting has been, it can't do that. And maybe it shouldn't. It should do other things, you know? But I think that's what rock can do.
Michael, in an interview for Spring Awakening in 2006, you said, "I think at this point in musical theater, we have to liberate ourselves in a very real way from our preconceived notions about how a musical should work. If we try to keep certain rules intact, then the musical has no prayer of growing and continuing to express what it used to from the beginning. A popular musical idiom combined with storytelling." A bit of what you were saying earlier.
Right.
Having liberated yourself from those rules in different ways for both Spring Awakening and American Idiot, in what new ways do you believe we need to push the form and its rules?
Wow. What's ironic is I give these kinds of interviews like after I've made a show, and I never go into a show thinking about that. I don't go in thinking like, I'm going to change the musical. I'm going to forge new ground. I just, it's not part of my consciousness. I just find a story that I want to tell, and I try to listen to the way it wants to be told, and then I'm a slave to that. And I'll do anything in my power to make that thing happen the way I believe it wants to happen. I guess that's as close as I'm going to ever be to being a parent, these will be my kids in a way, and I won't give them rules, but I'll give them guidelines, So I don't know how to answer that, actually, but I think that if any of us who are trying to do things in a way that's different from the way that it's come before, if any of that works to make it possible to imagine things differently the next time, then that's as good as that. I can't ask for more than that.
I say amen. Let's go to some audience questions. A Twitter question from Aliyah Kaczynski. For Billie, any insights, thoughts, or memories that you regret sharing in lyrics?
In sharing in what?
In your lyrics. Anything you wish you hadn't written?
No.
Good. Several tweeters wanted to know which character you'd most like to play in the show.
Heather, right?
Well, look, that's who I'd like to play in the show.
Oakland. Pregnant. I don't know. No, I don't know. I don't know.
Okay.
Yeah, I don't know. That's safe to say. I don't know. I don't know.
That's very safe.
Yeah. I don't know. It'd be fun to be the drummer that's up there playing while everybody else is doing their thing,
This comes to us from Jacqueline, I think. Billie Joe, would you ever consider gender reversing the roles of American Idiot?
Yeah, totally. We've talked about that before. Mm-hmm. We've talked about, different people with, possibly playing St. Jimmy in the future, and I think one thing that is that what I get from the musical is that the women in this show come across as sort of the most powerful. When Heather leaves, gets rid of the deadbeat guy sitting on the couch. When what's her name gets sick of the junkie. When extraordinary girl is ends up with Tunney. At the end in the military. I think those are they're big statements.
Mm. Brittany from San Francisco. Would you say St. Jimmy represents the disease of addiction?
For me? Okay. I think St. Jimmy represents someone that you really want to hang out with and someone that you want to kiss or kill. So it's, yeah, or both. You know, it's you know, he's I don't know. I mean, just something about that song. It's so uplifting, but you know, but one of the most dangerous people you could come across, really.
Mm-hmm. Laura wants to know: are you interested in writing another musical?
Yeah,
I would like to know that too.
Yeah, I would do. Yeah, definitely, I would do something in the future.
Michael will direct. It will be in one of my theaters. We'll all be happy.
Great. This good old boy circle happening up here.
It's the new mafia, yo. What do you consider, this for you, Billie, what do you consider the most difficult obstacle you've had to overcome, either as a musician or personally? That's from Lori.
I think just self-doubt. Just, you know, but I think that goes along with the territory of, you know, any artist. Is like when you feel like, I think anytime you get into something that you start to fall in love with it, there comes that moment where you go, does this suck? And, you know, and I think it's just your way of I think that's a way of like, you might be a little tired or hungover or both, you know? So you just, you know, it's like trying to take a step back, and, you know, I get really obsessive on projects. So, you know, so I've been getting a little bit better about like removing myself a little bit more lately.
Mm-hmm. That connects to a Twitter question from Michael from Luann. What was the little voice inside your head saying to you during pre-production, but you ignored?
There's too much going on.
Sweet. That's not a little voice.
It wasn't a little.
Quit now. That was you on the God mic.
You're never too old to leave.
Megan would like to know, I think for both of you, do you imagine St. Jimmy to be a character separate from Johnny, or an imaginary person projection of the darker part of Johnny, or his metaphor for addiction?
I think it goes beyond addiction. I think it's all bad things, you know. But yeah, I mean, I think he's definitely the dark side, or he's the demon of Johnny.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, we were when I was listening to the record before we ever spoke. I kind of imagined him as being kind of like Brad Pitt in Fight Club. You know, Tyler Durden. Yeah, and when we were talking, Billie said that was something he was going for when he was coming up with it. So I do think it's an imaginary. It's something that it's a character that Johnny has created, but it is from him, and it is that dark, that dark part of him that he has to do battle with, and that can manifest as an addiction to something that will kill you.
This question comes to you, Michael, from Judy. Were your parents encouraging of your creativity during your childhood? Were your talents nurtured in school?
Yeah, my parents were actually great. They've always been incredibly supportive, and they always, you know, they would come to see all the shows, even the ones that I did in the basement, forcing my cousins and siblings to be in. I was a little taskmaster.
Hey kids,
even
let's
then.
put on a show.
So really, you know, that's how it worked. And in school, you know, when I wasn't getting slammed into lockers, I was lucky enough to find a safe haven in the drama club. And for whatever reason, I was just really lucky, and I had two really terrific teachers. At Tilden Junior High, I had Mr. Deanna, and in high school, I had Mr. Perry Alice, and they were both really kind of inspired in their way, and they were very ambitious, and we did a lot of work, and that was the place that I felt like I could be safe.
Mm-hmm. Billie, do you have any teachers that stick with you like that? Whether in school or in life?
Trying to think. That's a hard one. There's a woman that taught me, gave me vocal lessons, and her name was Maria Louise Fiataroni, and she was great, and she exposed me to a lot of. I think that's something about melody, and then the rest of my teachers are rock stars, anyone from John Lennon, Joe Strummer, Joey Ramone, Jesse Michaels, Aaron Comet Bus, Larry Livermore. I mean, these are just people that were really inspired me.
School of Rock.
Yep.
This question comes to us from the 92nd Street Y blog, from Daniela. Music is actually changing. Rock is changing. What advice would you give to the next generation of musicians to keep rock alive?
To keep rock alive.
Growing, evolving.
Oh my God. You just. Be great. At whatever cost. Just. Reach for the musically the highest you possibly can go. Not, and I'm not talking in terms of success, but the thing that makes you want to lose your mind on stage and do Pete Townsend windmills.
And you have done that for us. Thank you both.
Thank you.
Thank you all.